Hello, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Daly coming on for part 3 of our 3-part series lesson. If you have not watched part 1 or part 2 yet, you need to go back and watch those because this third lesson is us comparing, finding what's the same and different about story elements from part 1 and part 2 stories. So, like I said, if you haven't watched part 1 and 2 yet, you need to pause it and go back and watch those other 2 lessons. Otherwise, this one's not really going to make much sense, okay? So let me go ahead and go back to my screen because I want to do a quick review of what we did in the part 1 and part 2 so that we can talk about things that are the same and different. We're going to compare these 2 stories. So in part 1 video, and like I said, if you haven't watched it, please pause this and go back and watch it because otherwise this is not going to be enough information for you. I'm just going to do a brief overview. Part 1, we read the story Down on Budget Farm, and we have done this story a lot this month. This was one of our books for the month of April, so a lot of my lessons have been on this story. This story had our animal characters, all 4 of the animals were getting a budget, a paycheck every week, and it was talking about how they were going to either save or spend or donate their money that they received, their paycheck. So this story was all about those animals and what they were going to do with their money. So we answered questions from that story. We talked about the title, the author, and the illustrator. So remember, that's the person who writes the words and then the person who draws the pictures. We talked about all of our characters. So we had 5 for the story. We had Farmer Brown, Percy Pig, Shayna Sheep, Carrie Cow, and Henry Horse. We talked about the setting, which is where the story happens. So they were on a farm with a red barn that had hay bales and all kinds of different farm animals. And then we talked about the main idea. What was the main event in the whole story? And this story, we said, was all about the animals earning money and then using their budget to decide what to do with that money. So if they had enough money to get their needs and wants. And the last thing we talked about was the narrator. So who was telling the story? In this story, Down on Budget Farm, there were a lot of different characters, and we knew how all the characters were feeling. And when the characters were talking, there were quotation marks for a dialogue. So that means that the author, the writer of the story, is the person who is talking, okay? So that was the story from part 1 of this 3-lesson series, sorry. So again, if you haven't watched that, please go back and watch that. So part 2 of this series, we read our second book. So the second book was What Do I Need? In this story, we have this girl. She didn't have a name, but we have a girl who is shopping, and she is trying to determine if she has enough money to get something she wants after she buys the things that she needs. So remember, needs are things that we have to survive, like food and shelter, light, water. And then wants are things that we would like to have. In this case, she wanted to buy a phone case. So we answered our questions for that story as well. We did the title, the author, the illustrator. We said our character was a girl. She was a grown-up because she was shopping by herself. She was at a grocery store, and our main idea, what that whole story was about, was that she was shopping for different things she wanted or needed, and she only had $20. So she had a budget of $20 to spend, okay? Now, the person talking in this story is our character, the girl, because she was using words like I and my and me and words that you would use if you were telling a story about yourself. So that's how we knew she was talking, okay? So that is a recap of part 2. So part 1, we did Down on Budget Farm. Part 2, we did What Do I Need? Now this is video 3, part 3 of this 3-lesson series. So today, we are going to talk about these 2 stories and the questions that we answered, and what is the same and what's different. That's called compare and contrast. So when we compare, we tell things that are the same. When we contrast, we tell things that are different, okay? So let's talk about our titles. So the title of our first book was, once my toggle bar moves, there we go. The title of our first book was Down on Budget Farm. And the title of our second book was What Do I Need? Are these titles the same, thumbs up the same, or thumbs down different? What do we think? Yeah, very good. They're different, right? And I'm gonna type my answers in here. So one is Down on Budget Farm. And then the other one is What Do. Those are two totally different titles, right? Don't need to talk about that anymore. They're both different words, right? So the next question says the author. So do we have the same author or a different author? So let's go back and look at our stories. And I could go back and look at the answers we typed in, but since I have the stories right here, I can look at the title pages. So our author for Down on Budget Farm is Amy Shuri. So I'm going to type that in so that I don't forget it. Amy Shuri. And then I'm going to look at my next story. What Do I Need? Who's the title for this story? Yeah, it's Travis Schaefer, right? So I'm going to type his name as well. So let's talk about this. Are these people the same? Do they have the same name or are they different? So thumbs up if it's the same person or thumbs down if they're two different people. Yeah, they're two different people, right? Different. Awesome. Okay, let's talk about our illustrator. The illustrator is the person who draws the pictures, okay? So our illustrator for our first story, I'm going to zoom this in so you can see a little bit better because her name is very long. And I am so sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but I think it's pronounced Katie Zolnowski. So Katie Zolnowski is our illustrator for the first story. So I'm going to write her name, Katie Zolnowski. Okay. And then let's look at our second story. Our illustrator for the second story, her name is Whitney Senish. Whitney Senish. So let me go ahead and type her name. All right, are we ready to do our work? Thumbs up if these are the same people, thumbs down if they're totally different. Yeah, they're totally different people, right? So I'm going to different. Awesome. Okay, let's talk about our characters. We had a lot of characters in the first story. How many characters did we have in the first story? I'm going to go back to our answers that we filled out. So in the first story, we have Farmer Brown, we have Percy Pig, Shayna Sheep, Carrie Cow, and Henry Horse. How many characters did we have? Yeah, 5, right? We have 5 characters, and are they all people or are some of them animals? Yeah, some of them are animals, right? So I think that's important for us to note. So let's write that here. So we had 5 characters, animals, and people. Okay. Let's talk about our second story. So our second story, we have for characters just the girl, right? She's the only character we talked about. So the second story, my little guy's running, his brain's going. There we go. Okay, our second story, we had one character. It's only a person, no animals, right? Person, no animals. Okay. So let's think about these two stories. Are the characters the same? Like there's the same number, there's the same kind of creature, like it's an animal or a person, or are they different? Thumbs up if it's the same, thumbs down if it's different. Yeah, they're two very different characters, right? One is a person by herself, and the other is lots of animals and a farmer. So different. Two very different scenarios. All right, let's talk about the setting. Down on Budget Farm. The setting is in the title. Where are they? What is the setting? Yeah, they're on a farm, right? So they're on a farm. And what do I need? Where is she? Let's go back and look. Where is she? Very good. Yeah, she's shopping. Where do we usually go shopping at? At a store, right? Back here you can see the grocery store. So I have a farm and I have a grocery store. Thumbs up if they're the same. Thumbs down if they're totally different. Yeah, good job. You guys are getting it. Thumbs up,
Different.
down. They are different. All right, this one is going to be a little tricky. Let's see what happens. So, what is the main idea of the story? So, our first story, our characters are using a budget to decide what to do with their money, right? Our second story, our character has a budget of $20 and she's trying to decide how to use her money. So, do those sound kind of the same, or do you think they're different? Thumbs up for the same, thumbs down for different. Yeah, I think so too. I think they're very close, right?
Same.
So I'm going to type in a description that the character has a budget, decides how to use money. Because that's kind of what's happening in both stories, right? All right, here's our last question to talk about. The narrator, the person who is telling the story, the person who is talking. In the first story, we said that this story is being told by the author because the characters, we knew what all the characters were thinking. The character, when they were talking, their words were in quotation marks. They were using words like he and she and they and him and her. So those were all words that told us the author was talking, right? So let's write that for the first one. Okay, so the author was talking. In the second story, though, she's using words like I and me and my, and she is telling us only how she feels and what she thinks. So we decided that the character, the girl in the story, was the person who was talking. So in the second story, the character was talking. Okay. So first story, we have the author. Second story, we have the character. Are these the same or are they different? They're different, right?
Different.
So we did an awesome job. Let's look at our choices. Are these stories, would you say these stories are the same or they're different? Yeah, we have more different things circled, right? But our overall main idea, our overall thought of what the story's about is the same. So you might use these stories to explain how to use a budget with money, even though there's a lot of different things going on in each story, right? Another thing we could talk about with these stories is that they are both stories that we could say are fiction, right? There's a made-up character in this story, Down on Budget Farm. We have a farmer and then we have animals, and the animals are talking. Do animals talk in real life? They don't, right? So this story is a fiction story because the pictures are drawings, they're not real pictures. And it has things that wouldn't happen in real life, like animals talking, okay? So this story is a fiction story. Our other story, it doesn't have real pictures. However, this is all something that you could do, right? You could say, what do I need to buy? I have $20. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to actually count up how much money I'm spending and what I need. So this is more of a nonfiction story, right? So that's another difference in these two stories. My little guy is thinking. Let me see if my other stories where it should be. Okay. So we could also talk about some of the vocabulary in these stories. It looks like my computer. Okay. Sorry, my internet went out for a minute. Um, you could talk about lots of different things in these stories. The different settings, we could talk about what we see at a grocery store, what we see at a farm, how they both have food, how both are places people could visit. One is somewhere we keep animals, one is somewhere we go shopping. Um, there's lots of different things that you could compare and contrast. So what I want you to do at home when you get a chance is to go in your house and find two different things that you can look at and say, here's some things that are the same. These are both the color blue. They're both the shape of a circle. One has a dog on it and one has a cat on it. Things like that that you could look at and talk about the same and different, okay? You can do that with anything in your house, and that's a great skill to practice when you're reading to help you analyze different things you're reading, okay? I hope you enjoyed this 3-part series. Remember to make sure you watch all 3 parts so it makes sense, and I'll see you guys on your next lesson. Bye!